Here we go. It's loud. Sorry. Good evening. I am reopening the recessed annual town meeting from last evening. We recessed at 10 p.m. last night. Mr. Town Clerk, how many voters have checked into the second night of the 2025 annual town meeting?
127.
He responds 127. I declare there is a quorum present. 125 is required to start the meeting. So thank you all for being here tonight. Very quickly, for those of you who were not present last evening, and to recap for those who have returned, last night we also conducted a special town meeting and voted on all 5 articles and concluded business there. And in the annual town meeting, we voted all of the essential articles and articles 15, 18, 26, and 21. We have 13 articles remaining tonight. All remaining articles shall be taken up in the order that they are drawn by our lottery system. Thank you. Let's go. Article 16. There we go. Article 16 on page 36 of your handbook requires a simple majority vote. Does the Select Board have a positive motion on this article?
Yes, we do.
Thank you. I will be recognizing Peter Meyer.
Thank you. We moved at the town vote upon recommendation the Community Preservation Committee to raise and appropriate and reserve the sum of $225,000 for the rehabilitation of housing units located off of Waterhouse Road that are owned and managed by the Bourne Housing Authority, and to transfer $225,000 from the Affordable Housing Reserves.
Mr. Meyer, you have the floor.
Thank you. The funds to assist the housing authority.
Mr. Meyer, will you speak up more? Thank you.
Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. The funds are to assist the housing authority's efforts to upgrade family housing units 84 and 86 off Waterhouse Road. This will complete the authority's building envelope for their 705 family housing programs. Improvements to the building will include items such as installing new siding, new trim, new front and rear stops for better access to the building. Under the state formula, the formula that they give the state public housing is not enough. So what they do here is this is to offset it. That's so we can finish those units. That's the only way that you can get these state properties done these days is through the CPC. A yes vote in favor of the motion provides funding for the proposed project as is recommended by the Community Preservation Committee. A no vote opposes the motion means that the funding would not be provided and the project will not go forward. The Select Board voted 401 to recommend approval of this article.
Thank you. Does the Finance Committee have a positive recommendation on this article?
We do, Madam Moderator.
I recognize Carla Emmons.
The Finance Committee voted 401 in favor of this article.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on Article 16? Seeing none, we can move to a vote on Article 16. This vote requires a simple majority. Using your handheld devices, when I tell you to go ahead, you will have 30 seconds to cast your vote. Green for yes, red for no. You may begin voting now. Voting is now closed. I declare the motion of the Select Board as passed with 106 in favor and 5 opposed. The next article is Article 17. Article 17 on page 37 of your handbook requires a simple majority vote. Does the Select Board have a positive motion on Article 17?
We do, Madam Moderator.
I recognize Anne-Marie Sarunian.
We move that the town vote, upon recommendation of the Community Preservation Committee, to raise and appropriate and reserve the sum of $1,300,000 for the renovation and improvement of the Chester Park Recreation Area located on Arthur Avenue, and to transfer $827,351.10 from open space and recreation reserves and $472,648.90 from undesignated reserves.
Ms. Zarunian, you have the floor.
The Recreation Committee has conducted, as you know, a comprehensive recreation area feasibility study. This is the next priority with respects to all of our recreation areas. As you know, those areas are great, that are also assets, very unique assets to the community. And this one in particular needs a tremendous amount of work. I'm not, if you'd like to, through the moderator, add from the Recreation Committee Chair any additional information. A yes or a vote in favor of the motion provides funding for the proposed project as recommended by the Community Preservation Committee. A no or nay vote opposed to the motion means that the funding would not be provided and the project would not proceed at this time. The Select Board voted unanimously 5-0-0 to recommend approval of this motion.
Thank you. I'm just going to hear from the Finance Committee, and then we're going to go to you. All right. Does the Finance Committee have a positive recommendation on this article?
Yes, we do, Madam Moderator.
I recognize Dan Deegan.
The Finance Committee voted 5-0-2 to recommend approval of the motion.
Thank you very much. I recognize Mr. Lindsay.
Good evening. Thanks for coming out again. I am Jim Linsky from Pocasset. I am on the Recreation Committee, and with me is our Recreation Director, Katie Matthews. Feasibility studies were conducted on all 4 major recreation areas in Bourne. Clark Field in Sagamore Beach, Keith Field in South Sagamore, the Pocasset Recreation Area on Barlow's Landing Road, and Chester Park in Monument Beach. Chester Park is located on Buzzards Bay, west of Shore Road, behind the old train station, bordered by Monument Ave, Lester Ave, and Arthur Ave. It is surrounded by a quaint neighborhood of traditional Cape Cod homes. It is the only recreation area in Bourne with oceanfront property and view. The Recreation Committee determined that Chester Park should be the first of 4 parks for major upgrades. Currently, all areas of this park are in some stages of disrepair. For example, at one time, the cracks on the courts became so dangerous, the courts needed to be locked until the cracks were filled with cement. Surveys were held, a workshop was held, Recreation Committee meetings were well attended, and a presentation at the library was given with unlimited time for feedback from attending citizens. All of these were available on Zoom. During this process, 3 concepts were drawn, each being adjusted based on feedback from our community. Adjustments were made and discussion is ongoing, addressing concerns such as the parking, the playground, the basketball court, the multi-use court surface, the open space, the type of fencing, the lighting, the walkways, the open space, the drainage, security, maintenance, signage, regulations, and the seawall. This project has been presented to and supported by the Finance Committee, the Capital Outlay Committee, the Select Board, and the Community Preservation Committee. The Board of the Mo Beach Civic Associates has recommended a yes vote to their membership. The funding will be split between CPA, Open Space, and Recreation Reserve, as well as from the undesignated reserve. The funds are already available and in no way will increase your tax bill. $827,000 from open space and recreation, $473,000 from undesignated reserves. There will still be $1.4 million in the open space and recreation account and $2.6 million in the undesignated account. After funding is approved, we move into the next phase, the schematic design. Designers take the project goals and start creating rough layouts, sketches, concepts to show how the park might look and function. After schematic design, we move into design development. At this phase, engineers, landscape architects start syncing their work. With your yes vote on this article, Chester Park will become the jewel of Monument Beach and be a draw for both owners and residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to be heard on Article 17? Seeing none, we can move to a vote on Article 7.
Oh, we have him.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Hi, I'm Judy Koska from Monument Beach. I would just like to echo that this is the most picturesque of all of our parks. However, it has received the least attention in the last several years. Lots of resurfacing has been done in other parks, but not in Monument Beach. It serves all generations. You see little kids there playing on the playground, older people like me doing yoga and playing pickleball. I really want to thank the Recreation Committee and the town officials for seeking input from the residents of Monument Beach and modifying the plan based on our input, and I would ask you to vote yes.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to be heard? I see you.
I'm Michael Steller. I'm a resident of Monument Beach. I'd like to thank the town and the Recreation Committee and whoever else was behind this impetus because it's wonderful for our community. So I am personally very much in favor of it. I am concerned that once the money is allocated, that the community will not have as much input into the design and the conduct and the execution. There could be some issues with parking as it's next to Monument Beach and might cause more local pedestrian traffic. But it is a public space and it should be used and enjoyed by the community, by everybody in the town. So I am very much in favor of this, and I also have a little bit of trepidation that the community won't have as much input as I'd like it to. Thank you.
Thank you. Go on. Make sure you speak into the microphone.
I'm wondering what's on.
We can't hear you.
Hi, my name's Katie Matthews. I'm the Recreation Director. All of the data that we've collected through the feasibility study will be used to support the schematic design. We have data from surveys, community workshops, public comment sessions, and one of the biggest things that we do now in recreation is ask for the community's insight. We're installing a new playground at the community center, and that will be done in July. And the community, as well as the children in the schools, took a survey to pick everything down to the color of the playground. So I can promise you that that is on the forefront of all of the decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to be heard on Article 17? Okay. Seeing none, we can now move to a vote on Article 17. This vote requires a simple majority. You will have 30 seconds to cast your vote. Green for yes, red for no. You may begin voting now. Voting is now closed. I declare the motion of the Select Board is passed with 145 votes in favor and 9 opposed. Yay. All right. The next article is Article 31. Let me get there. All right. Thank you. Article 31 on page 51 of your handbook is a zoning article and requires a 2/3 majority vote. Does the planning board have a positive motion on this article?
Yes, my name's Dave O'Connor. I'm with the Planning Board and the Downtown Design Review Committee.
You have the floor.
We move that the town vote to approve this article as set forth in the warrant. This,
Can I have a second? We have a second. You have go ahead.
This article is to amend Section 2880 of the zoning bylaw for downtown district signs. The Design Review Committee is a long-established subcommittee that reports to the Planning Board. It provides initial site plan reviews for proposed projects within the downtown district and makes recommendations to the Planning Board to assist it in its approval process. It also approves the design of proposed signs in the downtown before the Inspector of Buildings issues a permit. Over time, the DRC has seen more than a few instances of unpermitted signs, signs in need of repair, first-time applicants confused by some parts of the existing sign bylaw. With that in mind, the Planning Board proposes an initiative to amend the sign bylaw as described in the warrant article. These changes are intended to organize and streamline bylaw language to make regulations more user-friendly for first-time applicants. Revise paragraphs that may be confusing, are redundant, or should be covered in another section of the bylaw. Clarify language on maintenance versus reconstruction of signs. Clarify the enforcement process of unmaintained or abandoned signs. Better define non-conforming or grandfathered signs. Add definitions to clarify town bylaws and cover new technologies and advertising devices. The intent of this article is to encourage and guide sign improvements that will improve the visual coherence and civic identity of the downtown without establishing a specific style and will contribute to the goal of an attractive and vibrant business environment. I want to add the most important point is this bylaw amendments only apply to the downtown. They do not apply to townwide. They do not apply to MacArthur Boulevard. A yes or aye vote in favor of the motion would amend the zoning bylaw to make this change. A no or nay vote opposed to the motion would maintain the status quo and the zoning bylaw would not be changed.
Thank you. Does the select board have a recommendation on this article?
Yes, the select board voted unanimously 5-0-0 to recommend approval of the motion.
Thank you. Does the finance committee have a recommendation on this article?
Yes, we do, Madam Moderator.
I recognize Jim Sullivan.
Thank you. The Finance Committee voted 6-0 in favor with 1 abstention.
Thank you. All right, is there any discussion now on Article 31? I recognize Maria Oliva.
Hi, good evening. I'm Maria Oliva from Sagamore Beach. I've been serving on the Design Review Committee for several years when this town meeting approved the articles for the guidelines for downtown Buzzards Bay. These design guidelines play a really big role in shaping the visual identity of Main Street. Signs communicate not only a business's message, but also the pride that we take in our environment. The purpose of the Town of Bourne design guidelines is to ensure that signs enhance rather than detract from the historic and coastal character that makes our community special. These guidelines strike a careful balance by allowing businesses to express their individuality and attract customers, while maintaining harmony with surrounding buildings, streetscapes, and natural features. By following these guidelines, we are not just regulating signs, we are protecting the visual appeal and economic vitality of Bourne. Thoughtful signage supports local businesses by creating an inviting atmosphere for residents and visitors alike. It strengthens our sense of place and contributes to a cohesive town identity. I encourage everyone, businesses, owners, residents, and visitors to see these guidelines as opportunities and not as restrictions. Together, we can continue to make Bourne a place we are all proud to call home. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to be heard on Article 31? Would you like to be heard again?
Report into the record.
Absolutely.
Downtown sign guidelines regulations proposed zoning bylaw amendment. To see if the town will vote in favor of the Bourne zoning bylaw amendment, sign regulations section 2880 to 2894 by inserting the bolded underlined text and deleting the struck through text as follows, and take any other action related thereto. amend Section 2880 Downtown Sign Regulations, Section 2881 General DTD Sign Regulations, Section 2882 Non-Conforming Signs, Section 2883 Sign Construction and Maintenance, Section 2884 Multi-Tenant Projects, Section 2885 Permanent Signs, Section 2886 Special Signage, Section 2887 Temporary Signs, Section 2888 Signs Not Permitted, Section 2889 Exemptions, Section 2890 Appeal. Add sections 2891 Abandoned Signs, Section 2892 Enforcement, Section 2893 Administration and Enforcement / Severability, and Section 2894 Downtown District Sign Definitions. On February 27th, in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 40A, Section 5, the Planning Board opened a public hearing on February 27th and continued to March 13th, 2025, at which time the Planning Board endorsed the proposed zoning bylaw amendments to the Downtown District sign regulations. A legal notice was published in the Cape Cod Times on February 11th and February 18th. There were 5 members of the public present on February 27th and 7 members of the public present on March 13th. The following 7 Planning Board members were present on March 13th. Vice Chairman James Robinson, John Duggan, Daniel Doucette, Corinne Covey, David O'Connor, Liz Brown, and Catherine Walton. The Planning Board voted unanimously 7-0 to recommend the approval of this article. Respectfully submitted, Christopher J. Farrell, Chair, Bourne Planning Board.
Thank you, Mr. O'Connor. Would anyone else like to be heard on Article 31? Seeing none, we can move to a vote on Article 31. This vote requires a 2/3 majority vote. You will have 30 seconds to cast your vote. Green for yes, red for no. You may begin voting now. Voting is now closed. I declare the motion of the Planning Board has passed with 145 votes in favor and 10 opposed. Article 14. Here we go. Article 14 on page 34 of your handbook requires a simple majority vote. Does the Select Board have a positive motion on Article 14?
Yes, we do.
I recognize Peter Meyer.
We move the town vote upon recommendation the Community Preservation Committee to raise and appropriate and reserve the sum of $14,500 for architectural survey of the Keene House located at 9 Sandwich Road, and to transfer $14,500 from historical preservation reserves.
Mr. Meyer, you have the floor.
These funds are to be used to conduct a comprehensive architectural study to document and record for posterity the historical and architectural significance of the town. The house located at 9 Sandwich Road was constructed before 1700 and is in the existing Bourne Historic District. Currently in private ownership, it could be demolished at any time. This study would serve as a critical step in securing a detailed record of the building's structure, materials used in its construction, and the results of the study will be part of an archaeological record of the town. A yes vote in favor of the motion provides funding for the proposed project as recommended by the Community Preservation Committee. A no vote opposed to the motion means that the funding will not be provided and the project could not proceed at this time. The Select Board voted unanimously 5-0 to recommend approval of the article.
Thank you. Does the Finance Committee have a positive recommendation on this article?
Yes, we do, Madam Moderator.
I recognize Jim Sullivan.
The Finance Committee voted 6 in favor, 1 opposed to recommend approval of this article.
Thank you. Would anyone like to be heard on Article 14? I recognize you, Mr. Doherty.
Okay, I'm William Doherty from Katomet. I believe this is the building that was originally scheduled to be moved to a site that was on the Puxert. This is the Keene
Yes,
House. That's
yes.
what we're talking about, right?
Yes.
Okay, and I understand that the reason it couldn't be moved was that the fireplace or the internal construction wouldn't allow it to be moved. Is the purpose of this architectural study to justify maintaining the house, or is it, or are they going to go through with the? Because was not money allocated to move the house?
The money was allocated. It's $250,000 has been allocated to move it over to a Tuxet, but we wanted to apply for some grants and we weren't eligible because once you move it off a structure where it is and move it over there now, you're not eligible for some of those grants. Mavis Robinson behind you is our president of the Bourne Historical Society, could answer in more detail if you like, for the moderators.
Well, in any case, my concern is that we have looked at this, looked at the opportunity to move it. Once the architectural survey is done, what do you intend to do with that house? Do you intend to then come back to town meeting and ask for money to buy it?
No, there's some work going on behind the scenes with a few of us that want to see about preserving it. We're going to sit down and see what options we have, because the money hasn't been spent yet, but we don't want to hold up the CPC money forever. So as members of the Historical Society, it's incumbent of us to make sure that we do our due diligence, and it's been years, to make sure that we preserve that structure. We can't preserve everything, so that's why this record's being done, just in case in the end we can't do it because of the issues beyond our control. But I'd rather have a record of it, because we can't save everything, so we don't know what the future's going to bring. At least we have a record.
Okay, so the purpose of the architectural study is to make let's say, what I'd call a complete decision with regard to the viability of holding on to it or then move in the direction of purchasing it from the private owner. That's the thing I don't get in this conversation.
All right.
Okay.
I want Mavis. Well, actually, Catherine's at the mic, but Mavis can answer some of this.
We're going to hear from the president of the Historical Society, Mr. Doherty, behind you, if you would cede the podium to her for a moment.
Mavis, how
Thank
are
you. No worries. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Can people
you
hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Will you state your name, please?
Oh, sorry. My name's Mavis Robinson, and I live in Monument Beach, and I'm here as the president of the Bourne Historical Society, and I'm happy to speak to Article 14. So as I sit out there as a member of this community, sometimes I wonder in my mind, hey, I'd love the story behind that. This doesn't always make sense to me. So I do appreciate, Bill, for asking the question that are maybe in some of your minds. Didn't we already approve this? What happened to that $250,000 that we already appropriated to the Bourne Historical Society to use to move and restore the Keene House? So I want to let everybody in the community know that that money has not been spent. It is still set aside, and we are still hoping to accomplish this project. But as we dug deeper and sort of discovered what it would take to move this house, it has become clear that moving the house, especially to the site at Uptuxet, is far more complicated and expensive than we originally thought. So this additional funding we're asking for, why don't you just start using the money we already gave you? This architectural study is really outside of the scope of what we initially asked for. Had we been house moving experts, we might have known to ask for this first. This is really a first step in preservation and in documenting the important architectural history of this house. The house is part of our own history, the town of Bourne. It's part of the nation's history. There are houses called Cape Cod houses all over this country. You can go to Texas, you can go to California, you can go all over and you'll find a little cape somewhere. This particular house is one of the very first houses that was built to be, that became what is now known as a Cape Cod house. So it's an important part of our nation's history, our town's history, and we know that there is some level of urgency in doing as much preservation as we possibly can. So we have not necessarily given up on trying to preserve the house in another way, whether it is trying to preserve it, where it stands right now, still pursuing relocation. But this would at least allow us to photograph, to document, to get an informed, educated, professional opinion on the structure and the current state of the house. So once it's documented and photographed, the records will become part of the town archives, where they'll be preserved for future research for us, for anybody in the country who's interested in this, and so that even if the house is eventually lost, which we hope it is not, the story and architectural history will remain preserved. If we are not able to move the house, which was our original plan, the original $250,000 will be returned in full to the historic reserves. So thank you very much. I respectfully ask for your support with a vote of yes for Article 14.
Thank you. Would you like to be heard? Go ahead.
Please. Catherine Walton, Monument Beach. I do have a question just for the 14,000. Let me stand over here so you can hear me. The 14,500 is to document the history.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And to put it
in the town archives.
In the town archives. Okay. So my question is, and I don't want to be disrespectful of the process and all the work that you put in it, because I do appreciate that. But my question is, we have a police department with a roof leaking. And I just heard you say a few of us are really interested in putting this together. And I just think with a town that we are like struggling to hold on to every single dollar. And we have a police department whose roof is leaking and so many other needs in this town that I guess my opinion is that the money could be better spent.
It's a different funding source, though.
I understand that, but there must be a way to look at this and to look at, the different needs that we have in our town. I understand that it's a different funding source, but
Okay.
That's where my confusion was.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Clegg, I see you.
While we're waiting for Elmer to come up, Madam Moderator, I just want to disclose I am a board member of the Bourne Historical Society.
A little louder, Peter. I don't know.
I just want to disclose I'm a board member of the Bourne Historical Society, and I'm speaking in that capacity.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Clegg.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'm Elmer Clegg from Pocasset. I grew up in this town, started at Bourne Grammar School in September of 1942, soon after the United States entered the Second World War. The Keene House was there then. It was in not good shape, but at least presentable shape. People lived in it. I've watched that house ever since I moved back here in 2012 and undertook to do what preservation I could on my family's 1850 farmhouse in Pocasset. I have to confess that we violated some of the preservation doctrine and when we added significant square footage to the property, but we did maintain the front part of the house and the way it presented to the street. The Keene House sits on Sandwich Road, 2 steps off the sidewalk. It's been in that location for many, many years. I don't think it was the original location, but it was close to it. It deserves to stay there. It deserves to be preserved. I had the occasion 2 weeks ago to be driving north on Route 130 from Mashpee to Sandwich. And I passed the Henry Wing School coming on 130 into the center historic district of Sandwich. And I drove by the Hoxie House. If you look at any of the historical representation of the city, of the town of Sandwich, the Hoxie House is center in that presentation. The Hoxie House, as I believe, I'm not an expert on it, but appears to be more of a
salt box design than a traditional, typical Cape Cod house. But the town of Sandwich adopted it. They adopted it. I believe the town owns it, or at least funds it. It's been restored. It is a centerpiece in the presentation of the town of Sandwich, and it draws visitors from all over the country. What I want to leave you with is this. The Hoxie House in Sandwich is only 15 years older than our Keene House. That house deserves not only our respect, but our preservation. I hope this town can find some way to work with the current owner of that property and preserve the Keene House in the location where it stands. We're talking about spending enormous money in the future on a new library. This property abuts that library property. You've got all that town-owned property behind the current library, where the Bourne High School, when I was a kid,
Mr.
used
Clegg,
to play
I
their
hate to
football
interrupt
games.
you, but that's 3 minutes and 30 seconds.
Can I have 10 seconds and I'll
Go
close?
ahead.
Thank you. So I just ask for your support, not only on this article to take an inventory of not only what's in the house, but how it was constructed. And let that be just the first step to preserving the property in its current location. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to be heard on Article 14? I see you. Go ahead.
Penny Cartier, Monument Beach. As a former educator in town, I would just like to point out how fortunate we are in this town to have so many primary source places we can bring our school children. History books are great, but when they can actually see living, breathing pieces of history, it brings it to light. We have the Uptuxet Trading Post, which is amazing. The Briggs McDermott House, when the children go to the forge and see how things were actually made by hand, when they have the smithy in there, it's quite amazing. Thanks to John York, we have a replica of the salt works that are working. It just makes the history book come alive, and if we can preserve another piece of our history, it would be a wonderful thing. Thank you.
Thank you. I see you. You may go ahead.
Hello, I'm Liz Henry from Pocasset, and I don't want to break this.
You don't have to stand right at the podium if that's awkward for you. You can swing around, stand closer to them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Sorry about that.
I don't want to break it either. Yes, Liz Henry from Pocasset, a longtime historic preservation enthusiast, and I think it is an opportunity for us to save something for the future generations that is a very special quality. Originally, we were part of the town of Sandwich, and the history we have in Bourne goes much further than when we were first incorporated. And this house, being as old as it is worth at least a little research and money. And that's what the Community Preservation Fund is for. It is designated for recreation, open space, historic preservation. And I think one more thing. And so it would be used for what it's supposed, the money is supposed to go for things like this. Can this house be kept and saved to its present location? We don't know. Is it possible for it to stay in that place, even though it's been developed by Mr. McKenzie and there's parking all around it? Is there any way that that can be considered as part of a restoration project for that house? We don't know. And is it worth $14,000 some just to preserve the history? Well, sometimes, yes, it is, just to preserve the knowledge of what's there or what maybe was there. We don't have very many opportunities like this, and I would urge the town to think about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to be heard on Article 14? I see you, Mr. York.
I'll try to be very brief. There was a question asked way back at the beginning of all this that wasn't completely answered. The question is, what's the purpose of this study? The purpose of this study is to document the actual structure of the building, the materials that were used, the tools that were used to do it, and that will be gone forever, and that could happen tomorrow if Mr. Machianzi decides, like some people in this audience might feel, that we're done with this, we've had enough, it's time to get rid of the building. The purpose of this study is if that happens, there's information about the construction of Cape Cod houses that will be gone forever for anybody, because there are things, it's the things we don't know in that building. You can read books that have been written about Cape Cod houses, but you can go in any one house and discover things that aren't in the book. So the purpose of this study is to document the parts of that house that will be gone if and when it's demolished. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to be heard on Article 4? I recognize Anne Marie Sarunian.
Thank you. I just have a question, and it's probably a question that just dawned on me, and I should have asked it prior to this. Has the Historical Society have support from the homeowner for this article? We're deciding on an article for a privately owned
Thank you.
home.
I'm going to ask Ms. Robinson to answer that.
What I can say is that the property owner, so far in our experience with him, has never denied us access to the home for the purposes of preservation. I know I've heard other things about how cooperative this individual can be, but so far with our efforts, every time we've called, every time we needed to get in there, he has said absolutely, and he's let us in. So we have no reason to think that anything has changed with that.
Okay. Thank you. Would anyone else like to be heard on this article? I'm seeing none, so I think we can move to a vote now on Article 14. This vote requires a simple majority. You will have 30 seconds to cast your vote. Green for yes, red for no. You may begin voting now. Voting is now closed. I declare the motion of the Select Board as passed with 124 votes in favor and 37 opposed. Article 28. Article 28 on page 48 of your handbook requires a simple majority vote. Does the Select Board have a positive motion on Article 28?
Yes, we do.
I recognize Mary Jane Mastrangelo.
We move that the town vote to accept the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 54B.
You have the floor.
Thank you. Acceptance of this general law adopts the prudent investor rule that enables the treasurer to apply the rule to optimize returns on trust fund monies. Prudent investing allows for a much greater investment diversification opportunities than what is currently allowed under the Massachusetts legal list of investments for specific funds. Prudent investing provides greater investment options, which allows for reduced concentration risk and an overall more balanced portfolio allocation. A yes or I vote in favor of the motion would accept the Mass General Law provision that allows the town to invest funds in accordance with the terms of the Prudent Investor Act. A no or nay vote opposed to the motion would maintain the status quo, and the town would not adopt the act. The Select Board voted unanimously, 5-0-0, to recommend approval of the motion on Article 28.
Thank you. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation on Article 28?
Yes, Madam Moderator, we do.
I recognize Tom Joyce.
The Finance Committee voted 6 in favor and with one abstention to approve this motion.
Thank you. Would anyone like to be heard on Article 28? Seeing none, we can move to a vote on Article 28. This vote requires a simple majority. You will have 30 seconds to cast your vote. Green for yes, red for no. You may begin voting now. Voting is now closed. I declare the motion of the Select Board is passed with 149 votes in favor and 11 opposed. Thank you. Article 19. Article 19 on page 39 of your handbook requires a simple majority vote. Does the Select Board have a positive motion on Article 19?
Yes, we do.
I recognize Peter Meyer.
We move that the town vote upon recommendation of the Community Preservation Committee to raise and appropriate and reserve the sum of $250,000 for the final engineering and construction administration services for Phase 1 of the Bourne Rail Trail and to transfer $250,000 from open space and recreation reserves.
Mr. Meyer, you have the floor.
A yes or aye vote in favor of the motion provides funding for the proposed project as recommended by the Community Preservation Committee. A no or nay vote opposed to the motion means that the funding will not be provided and the project will not go forward. The Select Board voted unanimously 5-0 to recommend approval of this article.
Thank you. Does the Finance Committee have a positive recommendation on this article?
Yes, we do.
I recognize Jim Sullivan.
The Finance Committee voted 5-2 in favor of recommending approval of this article.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on Article 19? Seeing none, we can move to a vote on Article 19. This vote requires a simple majority. You will have 30 seconds to cast your vote. Green for yes, red for no. You may begin voting now. Voting is now closed. I declare the motion of the Select Board is passed with 113 votes in favor and 48 opposed. Article 30. Article 30 on page 50 of your handbook requires a simple majority vote. Does the Select Board have a positive motion on Article 30?
We do, Madam Moderator.
I recognize Melissa Ferretti.
We move that the town vote to accept General Law, Chapter 59, Section 5, Clause 22J, which authorizes an annual increase in the amount of the exemption granted under General Laws, Chapter 59, Section 5. Clauses 22, 22A, 22B, 22C, 22E, and 22F by 100% of the personal exemption amount, subject to the conditions in Clause 22J to be effective for applicable exemptions granted for any fiscal year beginning on or after July 1st, 2025.
Ms. Ferretti, you have the floor.
Clause 22J, if accepted, provides additional exemption up to 100% of the amount of tax exemption granted to disabled veterans on their domiciles under Clause 22, 22A, 22B, 22C, 22E, and 22F. The Board of Assessors voted to recommend adopting this local option and to increase to the full 100% for all qualified disabled veterans. A yes or aye vote in favor of this motion would adopt the act and double the amount of exemption that is available for eligible disabled veterans. A no or nay vote in favor of the motion would adopt the act, and would maintain the status quo, and the amount of the exemption would not be increased. The HERO Act, honoring and empowering, recognizing our service members and veterans, is a transformative piece of legislation designated to expand benefits to veterans across Massachusetts. Signed into law in August 2024, this act introduces over 30 provisions aimed at improving healthcare, education, housing, and employment opportunities for those who have served our country. Key highlights include expanded behavioral health treatment, increased access to mental health services for veterans, disabled veteran and Gold Star family annuity, boosting financial support for eligible families, vet hire tax credit, active duty buyback program, property tax exemptions, and passing this article will ensure our town plays a vital role in supporting local veterans and their families, reinforcing our commitment to those who have sacrificed for our nation.
Okay, thank you. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation on this article?
Yes, Madam Moderator.
I recognize Tom Joyce.
The Finance Committee voted 6 in favor with 1 abstention to recommend approval of the motion.
Thank you very much.
The Select Board, I missed, voted unanimously also 5-0-0 to recommend approval of this motion.
Thank you, Ms. Ferretti. Would anyone else like to be heard on Article 30? Seeing none, we can move to a vote on Article 30. This vote requires a simple majority. Using your handheld device, you will have 30 seconds to cast your vote, green for yes, red for no. You may begin voting now. Voting is now closed. I declare the motion of the Select Board is passed with 155 votes in favor and 6 opposed. Article 24. Article 24 on page 44 of your handbook requires a simple majority vote. Does the Select Board have a positive motion on Article 24? I recognize MJ Mastrangelo.
We move that the town vote to transfer $585,302.14 from the Future Solid Waste ISWAM Stabilization Fund to the OPEB Trust Fund.
Ms. Mastrangelo, you have the floor.
Thank you. The Future Solid Waste ISWAM Stabilization Fund was established when the future of ISWAM was uncertain. Since that time, long-term contracts have been established, additional land for ISWAM operations has been acquired, and new site assignments have been approved to ensure the continued operations of ISWAM for many years. The OPEB trustees recommended the transfer of these funds to meet the long-term ISWAM obligation for OPEB, which is other post-employment benefits. This helps the town move towards fully funding the OPEB liability and reduces the general fund obligation for future OPEB liability related to ISWAM. A yes or aye vote in favor of the motion transfers funds from the Special Purpose ISWAM Stabilization Fund to the OPEB Trust Fund to offset unfunded liability attributed to ISWAM personnel. A no or nay vote opposed to the motion would maintain the status quo, and the funds would not be transferred at this time. The Select Board voted unanimously, 5-0-0, to recommend approval of the motion on Article 24.
Thank you. Does the Finance Committee have a positive recommendation on this article?
Yes, Madam Moderator.
I recognize Amanda Bongiovanni.
The Finance Committee voted unanimously, 7-0-0, to recommend approval of the motion.
Thank you. Would anyone like to be heard on Article 24? Seeing none, we can move to a vote on Article 24. This vote requires a simple majority. Using your handheld device, you will have 30 seconds to cast your vote. Green for yes, red for no. You may begin voting now. Voting is now closed. I declare the motion of the Select Board has passed with 146 votes in favor and 9 opposed. All right. Okay. Article 27. Article 27 on page 47 of your handbook requires a simple majority vote. Does the Select Board have a positive motion on Article 27?
We do, Madam Moderator.
I recognize Anne-Marie Saronian.
We move that the town vote to appropriate the sum of $17,133 for the purposes of this article, and to meet this appropriation, to transfer the sum of $17,133 from free cash.
Ms. Saronian, you have the floor.
This particular article relates to Cape Cod's mission to update the GIS maps. So this money would be the town share to be able to have that digital representation of both our natural and built environment for the town of Bourne. So orthoimagery is like a two-dimensional representation of the Earth's surface, and the planimetrics is like represents features like buildings and bridges from above. So the article would allow the town to have their particular maps updated. A yes or aye vote in favor of the motion provides funding to partner with the Cape Cod Commission to update the GIS-based maps that are used by town departments. A no or nay vote opposed to the motion would mean that the town of Bourne would not be included in the Cape Cod Commission's update, and departments would continue to use the older data from approximately 6 years ago. The Select Board voted unanimously 5-0-0 to recommend approval of this motion.
Thank you. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation on this article?
Yes, we do, Madam Moderator.
I recognize Jim Sullivan.
The Finance Committee voted 7-0 to recommend approval of this article.
Thank you very much. Is there any further discussion on Article 27? I see you, Mr. Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Stephen Mealy from Sagamore Beach and former representative to the Cape Cod Commission for the town. These maps are used by the Commission in all of the towns, and it would behoove the town of Bourne to continue to pay for and upgrade our portion of the maps, and I would urge your support for this particular article. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Mr. Mealy. Would anyone else like to be heard on this article? Seeing none, we can move to a vote on Article 27. This vote requires a simple majority. Using your handheld device, you will have 30 seconds to cast your vote. Green for yes, red for no. You may begin voting now. Voting is now closed. I declare the motion of the Select Board has passed with 153 votes in favor and 7 opposed. Article 13. Where is it? Okay. Excuse me. It's hiding. Article 13 on page 33 of your handbook requires a simple majority vote. Does the Select Board have a positive motion on Article 13?
Yes, we do, Madam Moderator.
I recognize Gina Zarovitz.
We move that the town vote to hear reports and recommendations of committees and state or town officers.
Second.
You have the floor.
A yes or aye vote in favor of the motion would allow committee and officers to address town meeting and provide an update on their work. A no or nay vote opposed to the motion would not allow representatives to provide a report to town meeting. The Select Board voted unanimously 5-0 to recommend approval of the motion.
Thank you. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation on this article?
Yes, Madam Moderator.
I recognize Amanda Bongiovanni.
The Finance Committee voted unanimously.
Thank you. All right, is there any discussion on Article 13? Seeing none, we can move to a vote on Article 13 so that we can hear committee reports. I have been notified of one report we are going to hear tonight. This vote requires a simple majority. Oh. Using your handheld device, you'll have 30 seconds to cast your vote. Green for yes, red for no. You may begin voting now. Voting is now closed. I declare the motion of the Select Board has passed with 136 votes in favor and 18 opposed. I now invite committee chairs to present their reports to the town meeting.
Good evening. Asa Mintz. I am the ISWIM Operations Manager and the ISWIM Building Committee Chair. I'd like to give you an update on a project we have upcoming at ISWIM, a new building project. Some of you know ISWIM's been going through a substantial site expansion in the last few years. The ISWIM facility and landfill recently went through an extensive permitting process, resulting in the town's ability to develop and utilize the entire site footprint. What this does is extends the life of the landfill another 15 to 20 years. To accommodate the new landfill expansion, existing infrastructure will need to be moved and rebuilt. This is primarily the offices, the transfer stations, the garage, as well as the residential area ultimately. For the past 2 decades, ISWIM has utilized leased office trailers and a maintenance garage built in the early 1970s. As the operations have expanded and become more complex, these facilities have become inadequate to serve operational needs. As a result of the permitting expansion, the final boundaries of the operation have been established, allowing the staff to maximize landfill capacity and place permanent structures in areas that cannot be utilized for waste disposal. To that end, ISWIM is proposing to construct a new office and maintenance garage. If you've been to the residential area in the last year, you will have noticed a large lot that is cleared to the south of that area. This cleared area is in part going to be used for this proposed project. The new office will provide the needed space for administrative staff functions, while the garage will provide updated, safe, and useful space and equipment needed to support and maintain ongoing operations and provide much-needed storage. The ISWIM Building Committee, with the help of ISWIM staff, Helene Carl Architects, and Construction Monitoring Services, have been tasked with overseeing the building's function, design, and construction. The building is proposed to have a useful life of 50 years, providing useful town infrastructure far past the life of the landfill. And as ISWIM's an enterprise fund, this project will be funded entirely by revenue generated from the landfill and the facility as a whole. As of right now, the ISWIM Building Committee is in the schematic design phase and hopes to bring this project to Fall Town Meeting to request construction funding. In the coming months and leading up to Fall Town Meeting, we will conduct public outreach with site plans, floor plans, architectural renderings, as well as other details displayed in areas like the community building, the library, likely Dorothy's swap shop, and town hall and the town website for everybody to see. For additional questions, please feel free to reach out to any of the ISWIM staff as well as any of the ISWIM Building Committee members, and we'd be happy to provide more details. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other board or committee chairs that would like to be heard tonight? Seeing none, we can move to the next article. Article 32. Article 32 on page 68 of your handbook requires a simple majority vote. All right. I need to ask you. Go to the I need to ask you. Okay. Does the Select Board have a positive motion on Article 32?
No.
We do not have a positive motion from the Select Board. Does the Finance Committee have a positive recommendation on Article 32?
No, we don't.
We do not have a positive recommendation from the Finance Committee or the Select Board. Is there anyone who would like to make a motion from the floor?
Yes, I would.
I recognize William Grant.
Good evening. We move to authorize the Select Board to petition the Massachusetts General Court for special legislation, as set forth below, authorizing the Town of Bourne to enact a general bylaw authorizing the Town of Bourne to establish limits on the use of nitrogen fertilizer with the goal of reducing nitrogen loading to marine water bodies. And further, that the General Court may reasonably vary the form and substance of this requested legislation within the scope of the general public objectives of this petition. And the Select Board is hereby authorized to approve such amendments that shall be within the scope of the general public objectives of said petition. An act authorizing the Town of Bourne to establish limits on the use of nitrogen fertilizer. Section 1, notwithstanding the provisions of Section 2K of Chapter 128 of the General Laws, or any other general or special law to the contrary, the Town of Bourne is hereby authorized to establish bylaw, limits, and other regulations on the use of nitrogen fertilizers. This act shall take effect upon its passage.
I have a motion and I have a second from the floor. Mr. Grant, you have the floor at this time for your explanation.
I'm glad I'm not the last person presented tonight because this is a little bit confusing. The article appearing in the handbook is not what you're going to be voting on tonight. In essence, the article is being divided into two parts. The first part that I just read is generally known as a home rule petition. The section dealing with the actual bylaw will not be voted on tonight. Let me explain why. First, why do we need a fertilizer bylaw? When waterfront properties apply nitrogen fertilizer, if it rains or an irrigation system comes on, the nitrogen washes right into the water. Preventing that is the central idea behind the fertilizer bylaw that I laid out in Article 32. In the discussion about the CWMP last night, you heard about the harm to our water from nitrogen loading and how expensive it will be to comply with the new state DEP rules about nitrogen loading from septics. Eliminating nitrogen loading from fertilizer is a no-cost way to reduce nitrogen loading. But it is not necessary to discuss in detail the nitrogen bylaw in the handbook because we're not going to vote for it tonight. We will have an opportunity in the future. The reason for that is if there is a state law on a subject and a locality wishes to pass a law on the same subject, first the state has to certify that it would not conflict with the state law. They're the preeminent body. So what has to happen is we have to ask them to give permission for our bylaw. The article in the handbook combined the home rule aspect, asking the state for permission, with the actual bylaw. It seemed at the time to be the quickest way to put into effect a fertilizer nitrogen bylaw. One fell swoop, we pass it, goes to the state. They either say up or down. It goes into effect right away if the state permits it. After the article was submitted, Town Council was asked for an opinion on enforceability. In that opinion, Town Council said that in his opinion, it would be better to have the home rule petition first, and if we have authority to have a bylaw, then have a bylaw discussion and pass a particular bylaw. The bylaw in the handbook addresses certain subjects that I'm not going over tonight because we're not going to be voting on it tonight. So it's a little bit confusing. But tonight what we're doing is saying we want to pursue in the future, if permitted, a fertilizer bylaw. Since we're not going to be voting on a bylaw tonight, I'm not going to go into detail about why it is necessary. But I think it's critical that we start to address the nitrogen loading issue, and to be able to do it at no cost, just by limiting the application of fertilizer, has a lot to be said for it. And I hope in the future we will be able to do that. But for tonight, we are just getting the ball rolling. A yes vote will be to submit to the state legislature in the home rule petition, request permission to debate and pass a fertilizer bylaw. Many other towns, most other towns on Cape Cod have them. And that is why I think we should have one too. And in the process, perhaps save ourselves some money with the nitrogen loading issue. So I urge everyone tonight to vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Would anyone else like to be heard on Article 32? I see you. Please step up.
Thank you, Madam Moderator.
You're welcome.
Keith Barber, Pecasset Water Quality Coalition, and member of the Town Wastewater Advisory Board. So, as we've seen, the comprehensive wastewater management plan is operating at a very, very slow pace. We need to start doing something to stop nitrogen pollution. So just so everyone is clear, so nitrogen in the air is fantastic. We're all breathing it in right now. We probably couldn't even be here without it. Nitrogen in salt water sucks the oxygen out of the water, thus killing the plants. And the entire process of what's going on in the water fails. So if you're familiar with going to Hen Cove Beach, or some people call Patchawisset Beach, walk out about 20 yards and you're in muck up to your ankles. That muck is dead plants. And they're dead because of nitrogen. So this proposed home rule petition will enable us to at least start the process of restricting nitrogen. For example, obviously the number one nitrogen generator are septic systems. That's why on the Cape we have new regulations for septic systems which are passed, which went into effect July 7th, 2 years ago. So that is going to help us to continue the process of improvement. But if we stop fertilizer, which is the number 2 polluter of nitrogen, if we can stop it, eliminate it, slow it down, then we're going to start to get our water back to where it should be for our grandkids or our great-grandkids or whoever else is coming along. One of the topics that is a problem is that people with fertilizer nitrogen on their lawns, those people are from Metro West, they're from the South Shore, and they live in a place where the soil isn't porous like it is here. That's why this new DEP regulation is only for the Cape, because our soil is so porous. So not only does the fertilizer wash off if it rains or you turn your sprinklers on, it goes into the ground and ends up in the water, salt water. So we need to get people on the Cape to think about having a Cape Cod lawn, not a beautifully turfed Wellesley lawn. I have a document which is available on the Pecasset Water Quality website, and it's also available on Association to Preserve Cape Cod. this describes what a Cape Cod lawn is. It has no nitrogen. You can have fertilizer, you just can't put nitrogen. If any of you have a lawn care service and you want to try to fix this, call them, because most of them have an alternative. They have some way of stopping nitrogen loading into our water. So just in summary, this needs to pass tonight so we can start the process. And I think it's probably not perfect, but I think a line that we use in our work in the Pocasset Water Quality Coalition, we can't let perfect get in the way of great. Starting is great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, I recognize you. You step forward to the podium. Thank you.
Hello, David Arnold, Monument Beach. I'm all for this vote tonight, but I will tell you, anybody who's ever fertilized their lawn with the old-fashioned drop spreader, and you run your spreader up and down with the drop spreader, and you come back the next day and you see green stripes. The nitrogen from that fertilizer doesn't go very far, because the parts you miss, it doesn't go. So to think that once it rains, it washes right off into the water is false. The nitrogen is not good, but the grasses actually attach the nitrogen. They have nodules, and there are a lot of vegetation other than grasses that attaches to the nitrogen. There's many other nitrogen sources than fertilizers and septic systems, and anybody who lives in Monument Beach or a lot of the other harbors, in the summertime we have Canadian geese, and nobody ever addresses that. In the inland waterways and many other parts of Massachusetts inland, the geese, one Canadian goose drops 2 pounds of feces a day, and their urine is in the feces, and in their urine is nitrogen. Nobody ever talks about this, and the scientists know about it, but we can't do anything about the geese because they're natural and they were here before us. Well, actually they weren't, because they used to migrate. They used to pass through and migrate north, and they just stop here temporarily. Well, now they're here all the time, and they're loading our estuaries with nitrogen, and no one says anything about it. But it's a huge source of nitrogen. We have to start addressing that at some point too, and not just pointing at humans as a source of nitrogen. Every other warm-blooded animal on the face of the earth lays their feces on the ground, and that washes across the surface into the water. We don't address it. But when it rains, we say, oh my goodness, we have all this loading of nitrogen increases after rainfall. E. coli increases after rainfall. Where did that come from? It didn't come from the humans. It came from the warm-blooded animals that are laying it on the surface of the ground. Anyway, this is a good thing to support tonight, but we have to start looking at other sources of nitrogen other than the humans. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold. Would anyone else like to be heard on Article 32? Yes, Mr. DeCarolis, go ahead.
Hi, Bill DeCarolis, Monument Beach. The gentleman who presented first said that this was really confusing and complex, and it's really not. I think this is a broad overreach, beginnings of a broad overreach to tell people what they can and can't do on their properties. I agree with Mr. Arnold. I'm not really convinced that what's going on in our waterways comes from people fertilizing their yards. And so I do not support this, and I just think it's an overreach.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to be heard on Article 32? Yes, Mr. Sampson, I recognize you.
Good evening, residents. My name is Wayne Sampson. One of the committees I serve on is the Capital Outlay Committee. When the presenter came before us, I'm not opposed to the theory of what we're talking about, but procedurally, I'm opposed to it. The presenter came before the committee and said he was not looking to fine our residents for taking care of their property. He told us that it was an educational bylaw. It was then pointed out to him that we have a separate bylaw section that says if the bylaw does not have a fine with it, there is a automatic fine under this other section. My history in public service is that bylaws are really instilled for a specific purpose, and it's not educational. That's not the reason why we should pass a bylaw. My understanding is that there's nothing that prevents the Board of Selectmen, if they want to do it on their own, to create this bylaw and bring it before us so that we can see what it really says. I'm not comfortable voting for a bylaw that says somebody can create a bylaw in the future, but we have no idea what it is. So I'm not comfortable voting for it tonight. I'd rather see something solid before us when we do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Doherty, I recognize you.
William Doherty, Catawba. I'd like to, there's a couple of things. Number one, the problem with Canada geese is that they're not a native species, and they have caused considerable harm and unsanitary conditions. They have been run off in Sandwich, for example. They were polluting the spring water area that they had, and they did take aggressive means to do it. Nothing stops us from doing that. As far as nitrogen loading is a very important issue, and in the time that I personally spent on the Cape Cod Commission, we spent a lot of time taking a look at some of the ways of presenting it or preventing it. With all of that said, the idea of what the APCC is talking about is absolutely on target. A Cape Cod lawn does make a significant contribution in reducing that. My understanding of this particular proposal is to get to a point where we could discuss a bylaw. A bylaw certainly is not something that is for education. It is for applying a particular rule. But according to what we've been told, and I accept that, is that if we don't vote for this, we won't get to the point where we can, let's say, legitimately and in an open forum with the public discuss a bylaw specifically. I think we should vote for this, at least to begin the process. And I don't recall whether or not the Finance Committee had reported on whether or not they supported this.
Neither the Select Board nor the Finance Committee had a positive recommendation.
Well, maybe I'm reading something wrong in here. It says that the Finance Committee voted to recommend approval of the motion.
Maybe they can clarify.
That's correct, Mr. Doherty. We did vote 5 in favor with 2 opposed to recommend approval of the motion.
Thank you.
No, that's correct. That's correct. That's how we voted.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Bongiovanni. Would anyone else like to be heard on Article 32? I see you.
Keith Barber, Precasset. So just to clarify, what the gentleman just said is we're not voting on a bylaw. There's no bylaw proposed here tonight. We're voting on a home rule petition to ask the Select Board to ask the state if we can have a bylaw. So we're not controlling anybody's lawn or ruining your property or sending a fine. We're asking the Select Board to ask the state if we can have a bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to be heard on Article 32 tonight? Seeing none, we can move to a vote on Article 32. It's a yes vote would direct the Select Board to submit a petition to the General Court to request permission to submit and debate a fertilizer bylaw. Town Council will clarify the motion or what we're voting for. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's been discussed already. There is a state law right now that preempts or stops towns from enacting any bylaws that regulate nitrogen fertilizers. So what we would want to do, and if you vote yes, what would happen here is that the Select Board would be authorized to submit a home rule petition to the state legislature asking for permission for the town to enact such a bylaw. And we would have to discuss if the state legislature allowed that. Then at a future date, we would have to discuss whether we would adopt a bylaw and what it might look like.
Thank you. Okay. And voting no, we would not do that. All right. Okay, this vote requires a simple majority. You will have 30 seconds to cast your vote. Green for yes, red for no. You may begin voting now. Voting is now closed. I declare the private petition as passed with 106 in favor and 45 opposed. Okay. We have 2 articles left. Article 29. Article 29 on page 49 of your handbook requires a simple majority vote. Does the Select Board have a positive motion on Article 29?
We do, Madam Moderator.
I recognize Melissa Ferretti.
Okay. We move that the town vote to accept General Laws, Chapter 59, Section 5, Clause 222I, which authorizes an increase in the amount of the exemption granted under General Laws, Chapter 59, Section 5, Clauses 22, 22A, 22B, 22C, 22E, 22, and 22F, by the percentage increase in the United States Department of Labor, Bureau of Labor Statistics, Consumer Price Index, CPI, for the previous year as determined by the Commissioner of Revenue, to be effective for applicable exemptions granted for any fiscal year beginning on or after July 1, 2025.
You have the floor.
Clause 22I, if accepted, would increase the amount of the tax exemption granted to disabled veterans on their domiciles under Clause 22, 22A, 22B, 22C, 22E, and 22F, and annually by a cost of living adjustment, COLA, determined by the Department of Revenue based on the Consumer Price Index. A yes or aye vote in favor of the motion would authorize the town to accept the act and make an annual adjustment to the tax exemptions granted to eligible disabled veterans. A no or nay vote opposed to the motion would maintain the status quo, and the exemptions would not be adjusted annually based on the CPI. This, again, is the HERO Act.
Thank you, Ms. Ferretti.
The Select Board voted unanimously 5-0-0 to recommend approval of this motion.
Thank you so much. Does the Finance Committee have a positive recommendation on this article?
Yes, Madam Moderator.
I recognize Tom Joyce.
The Finance Committee voted 5 in favor with 2 abstaining in favor of recommending the approval of this motion. Wow.
Thank you. Would anyone like to be heard on Article 29? Seeing none, we can move to a vote on Article 29. This vote requires a simple majority. Using your handheld device, you will have 30 seconds to cast your vote. Green for yes, red for no. You may begin voting now. Voting is now closed. I declare the motion of the Select Board has passed with 145 votes in favor and 4 opposed. The last article, Article 25. Article 25 is on page 45. Oh, before I roll into the article, I'm going to recognize a point of personal privilege to Chair Mastrangelo.
I have a point of personal privilege. First of all, I want to thank you all for coming to a second night of town meeting. We haven't had to do this for a while, and I appreciate the time. I also want to let town meeting know that there has been a vacancy on the Capital Outlay Committee for over a year. Even though we reduced the size of the Finance Committee, there have been two vacancies on the Finance Committee that need to be filled. We have voted for moving forward with a library project, so a library building committee will need to be established. And we're due for our 5-year charter review committee coming up. So I'm just asking you all as like active citizens to consider joining one of these committees. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair Mastrangelo. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. We can now move into Article 25.
Last but not least.
Does the Select Board have a positive motion on Article 25?
We do, Madam Moderator.
I recognize Melissa Ferretti.
Right. We move that the town vote to appropriate the sum of $40,000 for the purposes of this article, and to meet this appropriation, to transfer the sum of $40,000 from free cash.
You have the floor.
Okay. So the town continues its commitment to supporting vital human services in our community. This article proposes an increase of $20,000 to the Human Services Grant Program, ensuring additional funding for local organizations that provide essential service to our residents. Key benefits, real quickly: expand access to services, stronger community partnerships, enhance support for vulnerable populations. This would help sustain and strengthen the town's efforts to meet growing needs of our community. A yes or I vote in favor of the motion provides funding for the Human Services Grant Program for FY 2026 with an increase of $20,000 compared to FY 2025. A no or nay vote opposed to the motion would mean that the Human Services Grant Program would not have funds to use in FY 2026. The Select Board voted unanimously 5-0-0 to recommend approval of this motion.
Thank you. Does the Finance Committee have a positive recommendation on Article 25?
Yes, we do, Madam Moderator.
I recognize Amanda Bongiovanni.
The Finance Committee voted unanimously 7-0-0 to recommend approval of the motion.
Thank you very much. Would anyone like to be heard on Article 25? Seeing and hearing none, we can move to a vote on Article 25. This vote requires a simple majority. Using your handheld device, you will have 30 seconds to cast your vote. Green for yes, red for no. You may begin voting now. Voting is now closed. I declare the motion of the Select Board has passed with 121 votes in favor and 2 opposed. That concludes all of the articles for this annual town meeting. At this time, I would now entertain a motion to dissolve the 2025 annual town meeting. May I have a second? This is a voice vote. All those in favor of dissolving annual town meeting, please indicate by saying aye. Those opposed? I declare it was unanimous. Thank you.